Hello, everybody. Today we talk to Chen, former treasurer of Rethinking Economics Netherlands. We talk about his journey from engineering into economics, the views sociology can give economists on labor, how he jumped into the position of treasurer, and is an example of start before you're ready. We hope you enjoyed today's episode. Hey, Alan, thank you so much for being here. And what have you been up to? How have you been?
So recently the semester just started and I just came back from Taiwan. So I left Amsterdam around March due to the COVID situation. So I think I stayed in Taiwan for 6 months. So now I just came back, and then I think 6 months is a long time. So I feel a bit strange to be back and I need to get used to the environment again. So yeah.
How is it different living here from living in Taiwan?
I mean, everything, right? Like starting from weather, like Taiwan now it's like 30 degrees, and now here it's like, I don't know, 20, sometimes even lower, and it rains a lot here. In Taiwan, there's like usually we have a lot of rain in the summer, but not this year. So then the weather is just different. And also, yeah, the language. Like I feel like my English is not like I don't speak English well now because I stopped speaking English for a long time, and then you need to get used to, when you change a language, you take some time to get used to it, and also just like eating. Like here, like in Taiwan, I eat rice every meal, even for breakfast. And I know, yeah, here people don't eat rice, and then it's more difficult to get used to. Like I've been here for 3.5 years. But then I never get used to the eating culture here. So yeah, like it's always like a lot of I just need time to get used to the environment.
Okay. So what was it like when you got here first? So you came to Netherlands for your bachelor?
Yeah.
So what are you studying?
So I study in University of Amsterdam, and the course it's called PPLE. So it's a mixture of politics, psychology, law, and economics. And I major in economics, so we have to do the 4 courses, but then you need to pick one as your major, and so I major in economics.
Ah, okay. So why did you come here all the way from Taiwan?
Yeah, it's just so I used to study in engineering in Taiwan for like 1 year, but then it's a long story, but in short, it's just I want to do social science. So then I have 2 options back then. I either, because in Taiwan you don't just in here in Europe you apply for university, but in Taiwan you have to take like the college entrance exam, and it's super difficult and it's really tough. And so I need to spend a whole year preparing for the exam if I want to restart social science. So I feel like rather than spending 1 year learning, like preparing for the exam, which is not helpful for your rest of your life, I decided maybe I can try abroad, to study outside Taiwan. But then I only speak English, so I need to find a country that speak English. And so it's either like, I don't know, US, UK, or Netherlands, which offer a lot of English course. And I don't know, this sounds really bad, I don't know, but Netherlands is cheaper, much cheaper than UK and US. But it's also really nice. Like when I was working in Taiwan, I work in a circular economy think tank, and we talk about how progress is the Netherlands. So then I feel like it's not only cheap but like a really good place to study. So that's why I come.
Ah, okay. So what was this think tank about? Circular economy? Can you explain a little bit more about that?
Yeah, so it's just it's one of the it's like the main think tank in Taiwan to promote circular economy, because I think like people here kind of know what is circular economy, but in Taiwan it's still not the thing yet. So then so our think tank really trying to work we try to bring what people is working here in Europe and then kind of translate, but not just, when I say translate, it's not like the language itself, right? But really translate into something that is meaningful, that people can understand in Taiwan. So yeah, that is what we try to do there. Yeah.
So how would you explain circular economy for people who don't know?
Yeah, so I always say that I always start with recycling, but I always warn people not to stop in recycling, right? So people know the concept of recycling, right? So it's, well, you have some, let's say you have cell phone, right? And then what do you do after 2 years, 3 years, when you want to change it, right? You know, people usually put in their desk and then in a drawer and then never use it again. But there's valuable stuff inside, right? So I ask people what they can do, and people say, well, you recycle it. I'm like, yes, that's already better, but that's more, right? Because circular economy is more. So people know we should recycle valuable stuff. But then if we just make it into, we just take the precious metal out of the cell phone, yes, it create value, but I think it's like 1% of the value. If this is a 700 cell phone, then the precious metal will probably get you 1%, right? So €7 of precious metal. So that's not enough, like there's still so much value here. So then it's about rethinking the whole process of manufacturing, right? Because we want to make the most use of a resource. Like we all know there's a lot of resource, right? But if we really waste it, then we will be out of it like really fast, like 50 years or something, right? So we need to make the most out of the resource. So then we need to start with, when we design, we think of how can we, let's say the camera, right? Like we know that, well, in iPhone, you can't really recycle your camera, right? Because when it's designed, it's not designed to reuse it, to use the component, right? So then you just, I don't know, throw it away, we just never use it. But if we already think that we want to reuse all the stuff in a designing process, so after 3 years, so I think everyone knows about Fairphone, right? So this is basically what they're doing, right? So when they design, they already know that, yeah, we will be reusing this, we can change the module. So then we make the phone really valuable in the sense that even some part is broken, even it's broken, we can always, keep using the resource of the phone. So yeah, I'm not sure if that makes sense, but I'm bad at it.
Yeah. Oh, that is so cool. So interesting. Okay. So, but how do you have to translate it from Europe to Taiwan? Like, how did you have to change it so that it's fitting for Taiwan as well?
It's, I mean, I think it's difficult to because I think the audience probably wouldn't understand Taiwanese, but I think first of all, then when most of the time we're reading report from, let's say, Ellen MacArthur foundation, and then they have really complicated report, right? So you should get the point that people would understand, but not technical details. And then you also use, examples that people if I use Fairphone as an example in Taiwan, people probably couldn't understand because Fairphone is not in Taiwan. So you have to find something, find better example, Taiwanese company that people can understand, then yeah, they got it. So that's
Okay.
language translation.
Ah, interesting. Okay. So a little bit back, you said that you went to study in Amsterdam, PPLE, I think it was. So why did you decide to focus on the economics part of that study?
Well, even now I still don't know, to be honest. I think, well, I think I do economics because I feel like, okay, so just need to go back to why I quit engineering school, right? So I'm really, yeah, I think I'm good at mathematics and physics, so that's why I went to engineering school, and then I really want to have dream, to become, like a engineer that can change the world, that can make the world a better place, like this engineering dream. But then, I really worked hard doing my the year I studied engineering, but I start to feel that what's the point of being a good engineer if the world is bad, right? It's unjust. It's, yeah, what's the point of being a good engineer if the world is it's not a good place to live, right? You know, making a better, I don't know, a better cell phone, a better, you know, machine doesn't automatically make the society bigger, right? Like better, right? Because if we don't divide the resource the right way, if we don't really make sure that everyone enjoy, you know, the benefit the society create, then what's the point of making a better machine? I might actually be part of the, you know, system that make people's life even worse, you know, creating more efficient machine but then oppress the people. So then I feel like, yeah, I need to understand, yeah, I need to understand what is just, you know. So yeah, so I feel like, yeah, then it has to be social science, right? You know, so I was back then I was thinking about, you know, anthropology, sociology, politics, economics, you know, and I just don't know. And then because I never studied before, right? So and I want to make sure that I don't want to start like I don't want to study, I don't know, anthropology and then regret and start my third bachelor. No, that's too much for me. So then I come across this course, you know, PPLE. Wow, it's like a mixed course. Then I have one more year to decide upon. So then that's why I take PPLE and then yeah, and then yeah, and then 1 year afterward, I was like deciding whether it's politics or economics, and I decided to do economics, but I also do minor in politics and sociology, so I do two minor. So still, I guess I still haven't figured out what I want to do, like, but just like I take everything, like try to yeah, learn a lot.
Uh, so do you know what you want to do after this, or are you still just guessing and thinking
No,
about it?
I'm pretty sure. Like, um, I think I want to do a sociological approach to understand the economy, right? So I think the audience in economics, like Rethinking Economics, probably know that, yeah, a lot of audience probably also study economics, right? And then you understand that you study economics a lot of time really doesn't help you to understand the economy that well. And because we're I don't know, busy with econometric, right? You know, trying to get there, or we're doing like I take extra course on mathematics just because I like it. I think it's fun. You know, and we're doing this really complicated function, you know, trying to, I don't know, switch the variable, do complicated skills. But then well, I do enjoy because well, I was trained as an engineer before, and I really think mathematics is fun, right? But then it doesn't help me to understand what doesn't answer the question that I have when I leave the engineering school in Taiwan. So, but then I came across a sociology course on labor, you know, so to conceptualize labor and how laborers, you know, play roles in the economy. And I realized it's so rich, you know, it's like it's something that really like broadened my horizon because yeah, sociology is different and it's really look deep into what the economy is. So then I think there's several courses in the graduate school that offer something like that. And that's kind of I think what I want to do.
So what do you mean sociology and labor? Can you explain a bit more on what that means?
Yeah, I'll give an example. So during the course, like during the introduction, and where everyone was introducing themselves, and yeah, when it's my turn, you know, I was doing macroeconomics at the same time, and then we spend, you know, 2 3 weeks on, you know, this concept of labor, you know, like the production function, you know, the solo model also have an L, right? So I feel like I must know a lot. So I take out the, you know, my notebook, and so we're having this Zoom call, and I'm not sure if I'm showing off, but I just show, you know, my classmates. No, not all of them do economics. A lot of them, I think I'm probably the only economics student in that class, and show them, you know, this is how we conceptualize, you know, labor. You know, it's really like I don't know, 7 8 line of, you know, function, and show, you know, and then well, the tutor studies sociology, but we discuss a bit, yeah, what we're trying to do is this is the elasticity, you know, how we change the parameters, and then we get something. And he said, wow, okay, that's interesting, but but he said he has a more fundamental question, and it's what is the labor you guys are talking about in economics? And I just feel a bit confused, like what is this question? Like what do you mean? What is labor? Labor, and I got panic, when I guess people have this situation, when people ask you a question and then you have no idea how to answer it. Like you just don't understand, right? You understand. Well, he's asking me what is labor. It's not the language problem, right? No, because I don't have English. My English is bad. So sometimes I panic when I couldn't understand the question. But in this case, I understand what he meant, but I also don't understand because what does he mean? What is labor? Labor is, well, for what we learn, labor is L, right? Labor is a variable you plug into the production function. So what do you want me to say? So of course I didn't say this because I know this sounds stupid, like what is labor? Labor is L. Like I'm not going to do that. But then, yeah, so I forget what I say. I just like kind of bullshit through the stuff, but this really struck me, like as an economics student, and then I think that course is like the end of my second year. So I already take quite a lot of economic courses, but why don't I understand what is labor other than it's a variable? It's like, 'cause it's not that I didn't learn anything, right? We do learn a lot in economic course, but then we just never try to understand the fundamental question. And so in this sociology course, we try to look, how labor played a role in our society. And then we look at how the conception of labor changed from, like like before the Industrial Revolution to, to how Marx he understand labor in the 19th century to, 1920s, 1970s, and then until now, how labor, the concept of labor, or how labor is understand in society have changed. And that really, it's like a historical approach and a sociological approach, to understand labor. And then it's just, for me, it's much more interesting than able to solve a 5-variable, I don't know, function in the macroeconomics course. Yeah.
Wow. So, what is one of the things that you learned while looking into all this around labor and economics that really struck you or really stuck with you?
Yeah, so we're looking at, like we're looking mostly, so this course then kind of shift the attention to like precarious labor. And then we're trying to compare, like, now when we're talking about labor having more flexibility, does this increase, I don't know, creativity, yeah, I kind of forget, autonomy, like just all the different dimensions, right? And as I say, this is something that you don't think about it, right? Like, because we just plug variable in it, or at least in undergraduate, well, the function is defined, right? So then for you just do derivative. You just try to solve for P, solve for Q, you don't think about, like what we learn in sociology, it's really, to define the function, to check whether the function is right. But at least in undergraduate, we don't do that, right? We just acquire the skills and we don't think, so we don't even know what we're doing. And then, you try to be critical, you try to say, what the fuck is this function? It's not like, you can, right? Because it's so difficult. And then like the math itself, it's difficult. It's already kind of overwhelming. And even if you ask, and then your professor, really nice professor that you have like personal relationship, like you know them well, and then they're a nice guy, but they will tell you, yeah, your question is interesting, but maybe you should follow a sociology course, or you should follow a economy course. Yeah, but here we do is economics, and mathematics is the common language of economics. So what you're saying, it's not we're focusing, right? So then what we see in economics is really naive then.
Interesting. So your professors weren't open to discussing what was behind the L of labor.
Yeah, like it's like, well, I can understand him, but then I can understand why he do so, right? Because, well, in sociology, we spend a whole block disgusting. What is labor, right? And then, well, he cannot just spend the whole block, right? He has to teach us how to solve this function using the Lagrange method, right? Well, he doesn't have time, so then he would tell, yeah, it's an interesting question, but then you should follow a political economy course. That at least what my professor told me. So
I get that. So is that how you got into rethinking economics, or like the
no,
shock of labor, or how did you get into rethinking economics?
no, that was several months ago when I like that was a course on in June, but I was involved in thinking. I think I think I don't know 2 years already. So that yeah, I've involved in thinking even before this.
Okay. So how did you join, or how did you get involved?
Yeah, it was just I was reading this book by Kate Rothler in Taiwan, so the donut economy, and then yeah, that was in Taiwan, and I was reading this back then. I have no knowledge on economics at all, because yeah, back then I haven't started the PPL yet, so I don't know. And then I read, I'm like, wow, you know. But I know I'm going to economics already. But I was reading this book, I'm like, wow, is economics really full of shit? Wow, because that book kind of implied that, right? It's like, well, there's smart people in economics, but then it's really naive. It really doesn't take into account, of the sustainability part. I was really inspired by this book. And then in her book, I think she mentioned rethinking economics. I'm like, oh, this is an interesting organization, but I didn't think about joining them or like, because it was in UK, right? I think the case he mentioned was Rethinking International, right? What we will call now. But I'm like, yeah, this is an interesting organization. And then several months after I came to Netherlands, I saw this poster in our library, the Rethinking Economics Netherlands is having a festival in Utrecht. So there was, I think 3 years ago. Yeah, 3 years ago. It was like our first. It was our first festival, and that year we had Ha-Jun Chang, and I have no idea who he is. Back then I just came here, right? And I don't study economics. I wasn't part of the movement, so I have no idea. But yeah, and then I remember this, rethinking economics because the Kate Rothler's book. So then I asked my friend if they wanna if she wanna go with me. So then we go, and I'm like, wow, this is so interesting. Like I was listening to his speech, and then yeah, like he kind of point out the problem with the current mainstream economics. And so I bought a book, and then I started reading it, and then yeah, especially one chapter, they're really, like I really like it. So when I came here, coming from a developing country, I think this is what a lot of people coming from developing countries think about, like why is Europe more wealthy than us, right? Why they earn much more than us? What's the problem? I feel like we work hard. Our society functions quite well, at least in Taiwan. But why does Albertheim workers or McDonald's worker earn twice as much as a Taiwanese McDonald's workers? And if you do economics, if you do mainstream economics, well, they will tell you because the productivity is different, right? But then this definitely doesn't make sense because, well, I think everyone can understand this, right? A Dutch McDonald's worker just don't fry a hamburger meat faster, like twice as fast as Taiwanese workers. No, right? No. Right, so I remember I came to the tutorial, and I asked the tutor about this question, and then he was told, well, so he gave me this really mainstream answer. Well, it's the difference between productivity. But I was keep pushing, so I used the McDonald's example, right? And he couldn't really explain, and I think he just panicked. I don't know, just also bullshit the way through. So I didn't get the satisfying answer. But I have no one to ask, and back then I was too afraid to walk to professor in a lecture hall. Yeah, why does Dutch people much more wealthy than Taiwanese, right? So I never get answer, but I remember in Hao Chang's book, he mentioned that one possible explanation is because it's not, you cannot just look at productivity because, well, Dutch McDonald's worker definitely isn't more productive than Taiwanese, but it's because there's a labor market restriction in the country, right? So in the Netherlands, there's high skilled workers, which are indeed, they can create a lot of like wealth. And because the McDonald's workers share the same labor market with them, so then, their pay get like their salary increase. The Taiwanese worker couldn't benefit from the Dutch, I don't know, high skilled worker. They stick to the Taiwanese high skilled workers, which have a lower, can attract less wealth. So then that's kind of one of the explanation of why Dutch workers are more wealthy, right? And that's an institutionalist approach, and I like it. And so I feel like, maybe Rethinking Economics really explains things better than professors, or give me a lot of more insight. So that's why I think I joined. Then
Interesting. So what did you do after you joined?
so then I joined. The first year I wasn't doing too much. They were I guess I was still a bit shy back then, and then so I went to their first national meetings, and then we discussed with them a bit, and then I didn't follow too much, but until they're holding the second festival, and then they reached out to me again and asked me if I want to help out. So I was part of the festival team. And then just join the meeting, get all the logistics down. And also it's the first time for me to look at speakers. We invite speakers for the session. So I was really stressed about that because because you don't know any cool, like back then I still don't know any cool economists because we only learned mainstream economists, right? And then I don't know, they're like Mankiw, I don't know, Solo, I don't know, just, those big names, but you don't know any small, interesting economists. And then, so it's really stressful for me back then to find good speakers. And then, but then I eventually find someone that is interesting. And then I help out. And then I think the festival was a great success 2 years ago or 1 year ago. And then, and then they asked me, and then 2 months afterward, in June, they asked me if I want to join the board. So I was the treasurer for last year, and that's how I really get involved.
Wow. So how did you find speakers? How did you go about doing that?
Yeah, it's so the festival that year was about, I think, different economy around the world. So we try to so I think the main focus was to bring more real world economy to the audience. And then since I come from Taiwan, so then I was responsible for the East Asian part. So I was looking, if there's economists discussing Taiwan or Japan or South Korea, North Korea, China, or Tibet, something, their economy. But I want to find someone interesting. And then eventually I find, actually, she's not a economist, she's an anthropologist, but she studied trade, right? She studied cross-border trade between Tibet and northern part of India. Mm-hmm. And then, so what her research shows, her research contradicts the economic logic, right? So usually we say that when there's globalization, we usually bring people closer, right? So people get closer. But in her field work, she actually shows that because of globalization, it makes people, it makes people trading between the border more difficult because now things can come from, I don't know, another way, but not with the, because when they trade in Tibet, it's like really rocky, it's like 4,000, 5,000 meters above sea levels. So it's very difficult, and the cost of trading is really high. So if they want to trade for, a huge quantity, it's just difficult. And also there's like borders control, and it is influenced by a political factor. So then it actually shows that after globalization, the trade between the two places decreased by a lot because the factor I just mentioned. So then globalization didn't really bring people closer at certain circumstances. It actually pull different groups away, and then trade become quite difficult. And then so that was mainly what her research was about. And then she present this. And then I think it's a very interesting session.
What was her name again?
It really casts my memory now, but I think it's Tina Harris. She's an anthropologist in UVA.
Okay.
Her book is really interesting. I really recommend. Again, right? Especially as an economics student, when you're trying to understand trade, you don't just draw graph and do math, right? You get to know what people really think. You get to know, because field note, it's really like the researcher really have to immerse into the situation, right? They talk to the traders. They live with the traders. They go and trade with the traders, and then they get first person experience out, and then it's just something really different from drawing a graph and get some strange conclusion. So I think her research is really impressive.
Okay. So then you became, so after the festival, you were asked to be treasurer. Were you like, right, treasurer?
Yeah.
Yeah. So were you like, yes, I'm gonna do that, or were you like, well, maybe not?
I remember doing the preparation of festival. I got so stressed out, especially doing finding the speakers part. And then I'm like, I told myself, I'm done with rethinking after this festival. No, at one point I really even feel like maybe I should just go to one of the media and tell them that I'm really sorry, but this is too much for me, and I'm just not knowledgeable enough to do this stuff. So, but I didn't do that because I guess I feel bad. I think it's more difficult. So it's just like torturing me for 2 or 3 months because the festival is really big, right? So we have like I know like 27, 25 speakers and 200 audience in total, and then we rent out the whole CREA. So I don't know the full name of CREA, but it's like the cultural center of UVA. And so it's really complicated. It's a really big festival. So I was so stressed for 3 or 4 months. And then when they asked me if I want to be treasurer, I'm like, no, I'm finally out of this. No, hell no, I'm not making my life more difficult. But then I say yeah. So then I become the treasurer eventually.
So what did you do as treasurer? How was your year?
Yeah, so our year is interesting. So for me, because last year the main focus was on festival, and I was only part of the festival. So when I become the board, when I can do my stuff, the only thing I can reflect on is festival. And then let me answer this later. I'll answer your question first. Sorry. So as a treasurer, the main stuff is to really get fund, right? And then just to make sure how the money flows and get the fund, because funding is really important, because we don't have the Rethinking Economics Netherlands, at least currently, just doesn't have a permanent founders, right? So we need to get funding from different organizations, from some banks, and from university. So I think that's the main job of the treasurer. It's really important to keep rethinking economics alive, to get, at least we have money, or else it's become really difficult. That's kind of our main job. But in our year, we didn't get too much funding. We got very little funding. And the main reason is because, most of the time funding depends on event, right? So you cannot just write proposal and ask for money for no reason. So you cannot just say, yeah, because we want money, so we. You need to have a proper excuse, right? So usually it's an event, and then for the past, at least I know for the past 2 or 3 years, they get money because they hold the festival, because it's a big event, and then what? There's actually a lot of expenses because sometimes you get speakers from outside Netherlands, so then you pay for their, accommodation, you pay for their transportation, so it's a lot of money. So we usually get a lot of funding from festival, but in our year we didn't do festival, so that's why we don't have too much funding. We also do a lot of like cheap events, so then there's no because funding usually start at, I don't know, at least 1,000, right, to 10,000 or even more, and then so you have a small event that costs like 50-60 euros, you don't ask for money for that. So that's why we didn't get too much funding. Yeah, and the reason why we didn't do festival was because we have 29 speakers in one day, right? And these are all really, really good and interesting speakers. But there's no, there's not like, it's not like one speaker than the other, right? It's like 5 sessions, and you pick one session, right? So I think there's like 4 part, and there's like so there's like 5 or 6 speakers going on different room. So you can only go to 4, and you will miss out on the remaining, I don't know, 23, 25. And I feel like it's a waste, right? Like we get these good speakers, and then we get these good speakers, but I couldn't go to all of them. Like when I invited speakers, I'm like, because I have to stay in the room, right? I'm the host, but there's another speakers that really want to go in another room. Now but I just couldn't go, and I feel this is so sad. So I feel like, okay, then instead of having this 29 speakers speak at one day, why not have this 29 speakers speak for the whole semester? And then I can go to every session. And I guess a lot of people think like me. So that's why we transformed the festival to a lecture series, or at least we plan to do so. But then it didn't work out because it takes a bit longer for us to plan, and then when we finally start, or at least when we finally are starting our lecture series, we get the first 2 speakers on the schedule, and here comes the COVID-19. Everything got changed, and then for me personally, it's also a lot of stuff. I have to go back to Taiwan, and then everything switch to online, and then so we just don't have that energy to switch the lecture online. So then our lecture series didn't even, there was no lecture series. But yeah, that's why we're really sad. But we will work on a lecture series this year again.
You are?
Yeah, so what's complicated? I feel like I'm trying to answer so much question and not even the question you posed, but yeah, so this year I leave the board, right? So pass down to the next board group, and then, but we're thinking about creating a local group in Amsterdam, because now I think it was almost always the case. We think in Netherlands, at least for the past 2 years, most of the board come from Amsterdam. And then, but I don't think this is a good stuff, because there's a lot of good student, good candidate around the Netherlands. But then it's not that we try to discriminate against other students from outside Amsterdam, right? But we just don't know why this happened. But then, like last year, like this year, 2 members come from Amsterdam. Last year, so my year, 2 members come from Amsterdam. 2 board members come from Amsterdam. The year before, also 2 members come from Amsterdam, right? So this is not good. So then, and you can also see that Rethinking Economics have a lot of event in Amsterdam. So then it become a bit too Amsterdam center. And I don't think this is good, because then we couldn't, because if we want change, it's not just Amsterdam, right? We need to have all the help from all other university. So then, yeah, this is something that we really tried to do last year, is to make a structural change to really decentralize Rethinking Economics Netherlands. So what we do then is to create an Amsterdam local group. So we have the Rotterdam local group, which is really big now. We also have people in Nijmegen, in a lot of cities. So we want to make sure we also have an Amsterdam local group. And then if I do the same, if I host a lot of event in Amsterdam, then Rethinking Economics Netherlands doesn't have any excuse to focus on Amsterdam anymore, because I'm doing all the thing, right? So then they're kind of forced, like we force Rethinking Netherlands out, because they're the national group, they're not the local group, right? They should be going all over the city, all over Netherlands, not just Amsterdam. So if I do all the event in Amsterdam, yeah, I kind of kick them out of Amsterdam. And I think this is gonna make Rethinking Economics Netherlands even better, right? So the networking will be even stronger. And so for us, yeah, there's also more reason, right? To get funding from UvA, because if we want funding from University of Amsterdam, we need to be a study organization, and it's easier. So yeah, there's a lot of reason, right? But yeah, so anyway, we here, because we just started and we still preparing, this to create this local group. And so I don't think we can do too much this year, but the only thing we will be doing, I think it's a lecture series. So yeah, remember to join us when we check our Facebook page.
That is really cool. Okay, so what is the thing that you learned from being treasurer? What is like the biggest lesson you learned?
Yeah, so I think the biggest lesson, like I'm not so sure about this one, but I think it's still better that we can get a permanent funders, or at least they fund us with a really big amount of money that we thinking can hold on for several years. And then, so I think, thinking about the funding strategy now, it's really just, like it's again, right, the comparison between lecture series and the festival. Of course, lecture series can, you can listen to all the speakers, you can listen to every session, right? It's good, but then one problem with this is you cannot catch that much attention, right? Because the festival is a really, really big event. So we will be, promoting this event. People will talk about this because this is a big event, this is a major event, and then you get funding for this. But as a lecture series, it's just some speech, some little lecture, and then it couldn't create that much attention, and which makes it more difficult for the funding. So yeah, so I think, yeah, but I wasn't sure, because at the same time, lecture series is also really cheap. Like basically, like we can spend like, well, yes, like we're, like the first lecture, we have one lecture series, that is a lecture from Professor Steve, and we want to make it as interesting as possible. We want to make sure that people, because the lecture series is like 7 in the evening, and people probably will have 4 hours or 6 hours of lecture in the morning and afternoon. We want to make sure that this is interesting session, so they wouldn't sit there like, why did I waste my evening in another lecture, right? This cannot be the way. So in the Steve lecture, we bought pizza, we bought beer. So yeah, our lecturer Steve Steve, a really interesting guy. Have his lecture for I couldn't remember, but like 45 minutes first, and then we have a 30-minute break. And during this 30-minute, we serve pizza and beer, so people can really kind of talk. It's kind of like a ballroom, so it becomes really, really fun. And I remember Steve was talking shit about a professor. I couldn't. Is it Richard Toll? I don't remember. So a professor at VU, and in the audience there was Richard Toll's student. And so during the pizza and beer session, they were like yeah, they were like exchanging argument, and that's really fun, right? And then, but it's so cheap. It costs us like, I don't know, 100 euros, 150. There's like 40 people come to our event, and yeah, we pay for the pizza and beer. And then we're not sure if we have money this year to pay for, I don't know, 20 lecture series for all pizza and beer, but we'll see. But yeah, it was cheap. It was, for me, it was like, compared to, because in a lectures, in a festival, you have to rent out the venue, you have to also prepare food, and then, yeah, lecture series, festival is just really expensive. And although you get funding a lot, but you also spend a lot. And lecture series is, you probably don't get funding. We're not sure. We're still trying to get funding this year, but it doesn't cost too much money. So yeah, I don't know. Like, I don't know which is better. Yeah.
So what would be advice for the future or the new treasurer that has now just started?
He's actually my roommate. He's the one who just passed by there. And yeah, so yeah, I don't think, like, I don't give him advice as if I stir his their direction, right? Like, I feel like, yeah, it's their year, and then they should do the thing on their own. But yeah, and we still have some money in the bank, so I think there's no pressure to really think about money now. But I still think it's better that we can create like find like a permanent funders, or at least a funder that can fund us for a long term, because that really give us a lot of, power to do stuff, freedom to do stuff, right? And I think, yeah, university should be a good, although I'm not sure if as an organization that really kind of criticize, like economics department, I'm not sure if they're willing to give us funding, but I think so. I think so, they would. But yeah, I think look for university. I think they're good potential funders. But yeah, other than that, I don't think remember to keep all the receipt and do all the track all the transaction properly, or you will have it's gonna be pain in the ass after 3 months. You couldn't remember, fuck, what is this 10 euros? I forget why we pay for this. Yeah, I don't think I have too much for the next treasurer.
Okay. So, okay, let's do a little lightning rounds with every person. Just say the first thing that comes to mind to the question, okay?
Yeah.
Okay, so what is a skill any economist should learn?
Field notes. Doing field notes.
Okay. Who do you admire or look up to in economics?
Uh, I don't know, Kate Rothward, but I don't think a lot of people wouldn't see her as an economist, but I really admire her.
What is a quote or statistic that has always stuck with you?
I don't know. I don't know for this.
What is a question you want me to ask that I haven't asked you yet?
This is so difficult. I don't know. Don't ask me. I don't know. This question is too difficult.
Okay. Well, where can people find the things that you're most enthusiastic about? Like, what are some resources that you would, or some people that you would advise them to look into?
Yeah, well, I really like sociology now. Like, I do sociology minor, and really like look into sociology research on the economy. Like, or not even sociology, but like just different discipline. Because economics is the discipline which doesn't cite other discipline, right? If you look at, I think I see a research, and they're saying that, like political science, they cite anthropology, they cite sociology cite, I know, psychology, they cite they cite each other. Economics just cite economic, like, just look into other discipline. It helps you a lot, I think.
Okay. So, where do you see economics going?
Yeah, I'm a bit pessimistic to be honest. Like, yeah, I think it changes. It's difficult unless there's more and more younger, scholars, you know, having the position in the university, and that's where then can make changes. But yeah, without this happening, if we don't have more critical young scholar going to university, I think yeah, it's difficult to have any changes. So then they will be on the same track. Yeah.
Okay. So, final question. What is your advice to future economists?
Yeah, it's really um, to not to like throw away all the models, because I think models still, for me, models or mathematical function is still a really good way to kind of to wait, my English does just my yeah, but it's a model is a way to kind of, it's like an analogy. It's a way to really explain things really fast. But like I still want to study the economy, but as a sociology approach. But I'm not sure if people will call this as an economist. I think so. I think so. If you study economy, if you study economy, you should be an economist. Yeah, but really to talk to real people, to look more into real world, because yeah, like a lot of things people have on their paper just didn't correspond to the experience of people in real life. So I think it's really to listen to what people feel, and I think that will have something really different.
Well, thank you so much for talking to me and for all the interesting stories you got to share, because I for sure learned a lot.
No, it's my pleasure.
Have a good evening.
Yeah, you too. Bye.